Hello and welcome back to Uncle Venom's Books and Whiskey. I'm Ron Rutstein, aka Uncle Venom. Today I wanted to talk about the novels of Thomas Flanagan, particularly his final one in the trilogy, his Ireland trilogy, The End of the Hunt. And I was looking for a particular whiskey to go with this. Obviously an Irish whiskey because it's an Irish story. I was originally going to go with Redbreast, which is one of my all-time favorite whiskeys. But I decided not to because Redbreast is a very smooth whiskey, beautiful flavor. But Flanagan is writing about harsh times. He's writing about war. He's writing about civil war. He's writing about rebellion. So I went to my local liquor store where I get most of my whiskeys. And in the Irish whiskey section, I found the Dublin Liberties, which actually makes a lot of sense to join with Thomas Flanagan because we are talking about the fight for liberty, the fight for freedom, the right for self-determination, and what kind of cost is going to go with that. So on the recommendation of one of the people at the store, I decided that this would be a good whiskey to go with. The Liberties Irish Whiskey Single Malt, aged 10 years, which is unusual for an Irish whiskey. Usually there's some sort of a blend. You don't see too many single malts. You see that more in the Scotch whiskeys. Underneath it says Copper Alley. On the back they have a note. In the heavenly shade of medieval Christchurch Cathedral lay Copper Alley. By day it rang to the cries of hawkers, tradesmen, tanners, and merchants. By night the pickpockets, cutthroats, tavern keepers, and brothel owners plied their busy trade. This seems perfect for the books that we're talking about. This is a whiskey that is aged in Oloroso sherry casks to give it a finish that would be a little nicer and give it a more even flavor. And it is 46% alcohol by volume. That's a little harsh. You're going to, when you drink that, if you're not adding a splash of water, you're definitely going to feel that burn going down. Not bad considering it's 46% alcohol. Not as bad as not as harsh as I expected. It's got a nice nose, a little bit maybe fruity flavor to it. I'm going to add a splash of water to see how that opens up the whiskey. When I say a splash, I really mean just a tiny bit of water. Makes the nose a little weaker, as one might expect. The flavor is still there. The sherry cask does not affect the flavor as much as I might expect from some other whiskeys. It does mellow it a little bit, and it does give us a little bit of a hint of that sherry flavor. But you definitely, you feel the kick, you feel the strength of the whiskey, you feel a little bit of the burn going down, but that mellows very quickly. This is a fine whiskey. It's very good. If you like your Irish whiskeys and you want to try it and you haven't, go for it. You're going to enjoy it. It was, I think, $55 for the bottle, which is not bad for a 10-year-old single malt. Redbreast is usually about $10 more than that. And it depends if you're looking for something that you're going to feel going down a little bit more than the Redbreast. It's not as rich a flavor as the Redbreast, but definitely an outstanding whiskey. Thomas Flanagan. Thomas Flanagan was an American of Irish descent who decided to write 3 novels that outline the history of Ireland trying to break from the UK. Thomas Flanagan, again, he wrote 3 novels. The first one that he wrote is The Year of the French. This one takes place in 1798. And they have an uprising, and the French, basically off a victory helping the United States get off the ground against the British, decides they're going to kick in and help the Irish unsuccessfully. Long book. It's the shortest of the 3, actually, about 500 pages. The second book, The Tenets of Time, takes place in 1867, and I read this originally in a mass market paperback. As you see, the damn thing is falling apart. That's because I'm not shy about reading. I just, especially in a volume like this, I have no problem creasing the spine, knowing that this is something that I'll probably keep and throw in a pile somewhere, because spoiling myself, I went and found a signed first edition signed by Mr. Flanagan, back when he was still alive, of course. This one takes place in 1867, and you get a very nice picture of what's going on and the Irish sentiment at that time. And finally, the last one, The End of the Hunt, deals directly with the Irish Revolution, the success that they had, the Irish Civil War that takes place after the success of the rebellion. Let's put these back. All 3 books are excellent, and if you ask me which one I like the best, my answer would be whichever one I happen to be reading at the time. I did read these in chronological order, which I originally didn't start out that way. I started reading The Tenets of Time, realized he had earlier novels and later novel, so I went and bought The Year of the French and read them consecutively. The novel begins with Janice Nugent riding on a train in Ireland. The train is stopped by operatives of Sinn Féin, and they take out a person who is providing information to the British at the time, and he is executed. She's shocked profoundly by this, and carries the image with her from that point on in her life. It represents the beginning of realization for her of what is to come as she has a relationship with a man who is a lawyer but works for Sinn Féin, eventually becomes part of the negotiations with the British. And through him, she gets to meet the various characters, the various people who are going to be a part of the uprising. And the novel beautifully draws the passions and the hatreds that many of the people carry with them, consequently beyond the revolution. Once they negotiate a settlement with the British that's going to create Northern Ireland, there is the faction led by De Valera who will not accept that because they feel one Ireland is all that there should be. And eventually, towards the end of the 20th century, some sort of reconciliation was reached between the two sides. But that was a fight that became an ongoing thing. De Valera became at one point president of Ireland. Michael Collins, who was the main leader for peace, was assassinated by De Valera's followers. This is all historical fact, and many of you may know it. It impacts on a lot of what we saw in the 20th century. This was right after World War II that it begins, and it takes place from 1919, up through the Revolution and through the Irish Civil War. It combines very nicely historical characters, and all of their speeches and texts coincide with actual writings or speeches or emotional elements that Thomas Flanagan was able to research and make sure it was accurate. So when you hear Michael Collins or Winston Churchill speaking, the words that come out of their mouths in the novel actually represent their positions and things that they actually said or felt. So Flanagan uses those pieces to flesh out those characters as much as is reasonable within the confines of a historical novel. He doesn't overstep and try to romanticize the characters. This is a brutal time in the history of Ireland, and it is portrayed that way. All of the fictional characters in the novel are beautifully drawn. You get deep understandings of the characters and their motivations, and they represent people who would have been there at the time or who actually took part in the fighting. And I highly recommend it, but you have very little knowledge of the historical period. You might want to watch the movie Michael Collins starring Liam Neeson and get a feel for the time. It is a Hollywood film, so just keep that in mind as you're watching it. And then go to the end of The Hunt and get a much deeper perspective. Flanagan tells the story from different perspectives. As you move through the novel, you're getting different perspectives of different characters because it travels from Ireland to England, where they negotiate the peace settlement, and then you see Michael Collins and his group coming back trying to sell the settlement that they reached on the Irish people, getting them to go along with it. And he does make the claim that this is the best we can get. We're either going to go along with this peace or we're going to continue with war. And despite the fact that Michael Collins was a brilliant tactician and led the military part of the rebellion against England, more than anything, he wanted a free Ireland and peace. And he felt that this was the best they could do, figuring that at some point they would have to pressure the British to create a single state. Unfortunately, that took many, many years and is still in the process of happening. All in all, an excellent read. I highly recommend this to anyone who's interested in Irish history, interested in historical fiction, interested in the devastation the British left behind them as piece by piece they began to lose their stranglehold on the world empire that they had before. Ireland was only one piece of that. The United States of America was a piece of that. Obviously, later on, especially after World War II, what was remaining of their worldwide empire collapsed one piece after another. This shows the beginning of that collapse and the struggles that the Irish had for their freedom. Thank you. This is Ron Rutstein from Uncle Venom's Books and Whiskey. I appreciate your joining us. Please hit the like and subscribe to support the channel. And remember, drink responsibly, read irresponsibly. Thank you.